like sometimes we just think that, oh, I'm just a nobody, stuff like that. Like, you're not a nobody. You're the one that God created as his
Mm-hmm.
own masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I don't know why I brought this, but I felt this was led by God. One of my Scooby-Doo collections again. This is, it's actually a limited edition piece of Barbie as Scooby-Doo's Daphne.
No.
So this was a limited edition in the fact that not only a normal Daphne, but this was from the 2002 Scooby-Doo Live movie. So the fact that it's a limited edition adds more value to it, because
Yeah.
there's a very few in number, and this is something that you don't find very
Mm-hmm.
often, and it was specially ordered. So if you say that there's very few in number and it adds more value because it's limited edition, that you are just one of a kind in this world because God created you as one of his own masterpieces, then how much more valuable you and I are, that he wants to go to any extent just for us.
That's so true. That's so good.
And that's the word that I want to share. And I feel that you have a very similar message on
Mhm.
telling people that, your message is unique, your calling is unique. And I love
Yeah.
many times when you talk about, I think even about your yeses, God's love, even in your nose. I think one of your
Yes.
recent
Yeah.
messages, I
Yeah.
saw that. That's so good, guys. Check out our YouTube channel, by the way. And also, you were talking about how even your awkwardness, even the things that are weird about you, like the way, no, you won't see any normal guy bringing a Barbie doll for a
I love it.
Christian message, but that's weird about me. But I believe that what's weird about me is what helps people to hear about him.
It's so
Like,
true.
so. Likewise, what are some awkward or weird ways you feel that we can reach the young people through their weirdness, their awkwardness, the uniqueness? What's your take on that? Like,
Oh, I love, man, I've never been asked that. That's such a good question. What weirdness can we bring? I love that. I honestly think it's just whatever is yours. That's the first thing that came to me. Like whatever is your weirdness, whatever is your awkwardness. You know, for me, there's been so many times in my life that I'm like, this is going to be really weird. This is going to be really awkward. Things such as, like I didn't grow up in a household that really prayed for one another. Like I had parents that believed, but like we weren't the kind that were like, hey, you're struggling with this. Let me pray over you. I didn't really have anybody pray over me till after college, and it was in the church. And I remember like this was just a couple months ago. And I pray over people a lot. But I didn't pray over my family ever until like a couple months ago, because I was like, this will be so weird. This just isn't my family. And I was like, oh, my siblings are gonna make fun of me, all this stuff. But I really did, like I felt the conviction. And so to me, that's just an example of one of when the Spirit led me to this awkwardness. You also think too, Jesus, like he lived in the awkwardness. Can you imagine when he said to the disciples, no, I'm gonna wash your feet? Can you imagine how
yeah.
awkward that was? I mean, like actually picture if you work at like a company, or if you, I don't know, Taylor Swift, I'm thinking of someone who has a lot of notoriety. If she came in and you were like, oh my God, and then she was like, I'm going to wash your feet. It would be so weird. It would be so awkward. It would, like, your CEO of your Fortune 500 company coming in and saying, I'm going to clean up your inbox for you and respond to your emails for you. You'd be like, stop. Why are you doing that? That's so weird.
Sure.
But it's living in that awkwardness. And I think Jesus modeled to us by example. A lot of times the blessings come from our obedience to just sitting in that in between space where it's awkward. And that doesn't even have to be for other people. We internally always have so much awkwardness, whether you're in between a diagnosis, like something hurts, but you don't know what it is yet. It's in between the healing of a relationship. Your marriage isn't great, but you don't know what to do about it yet. You don't know what it's going to look like yet. A friendship, or like whatever it is. You want to learn this thing, but you don't know how. You want to start a podcast, but you don't know how. You don't know what it's going to start as. We all live through awkwardness every single day. And I think, though, the power in living that out and embracing it, it's the same thing with vulnerability. I have a thing right above my desk that says like real, not perfect. Because for me, whenever I come on a podcast, the only thing that makes me less nervous is when I remind myself, wait, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be honest. And when I'm honest, one, I never run out of things to say because there's always something going on. But two, it just loosens you up to know like no one's perfect. When you feel like you have to be perfect, that's when you get so stiff and you feel like you can't do anything because you're afraid of doing the wrong thing. And so I think if we just live into our vulnerabilities, when you live into yours, you can help other people embrace theirs, and then other people live out theirs. So back to your question about how do we inspire a generation coming up to like live into that weirdness, live into that awkwardness, live into that imperfection. It's by living out your own by example and being vulnerable and sharing that. I wouldn't know if this is weird, but like for me, a massive insecurity of mine, I struggle with this thing called rosacea since I was a really little girl. Like my face will just get really red. And I remember the first time on a podcast, I like took my makeup off and shared it and I showed it. And what's so cool is the responses I got, it was not from anyone that had rosacea. It wasn't from the thing that I had, but what it was it let people say, I'm struggling with this thing and it's not that, but what you just did there helped me kind of like take the makeup off this thing I'm struggling with to know it's okay. And so that's what, like, I have another episode called like no makeup prayers. And I feel like that's just our life needs to be a prayer with no makeup on it. I'm not saying share everything you're going through with everybody. I'm not saying that. Even Jesus had like his 3 closest buds, right? But what I am saying is living your life in such a way that you're not making up your life to be somebody you're not by putting on, it's about to be Halloween in the United States, by putting on costumes and personas and things that you never were to try to gain approval from people that will never really love the actual you because you're not letting them see you.
Many places, what happens is, uh, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's a lot of this. People of other faiths, they have this feeling like, oh, these Christians are here only to convert. They have this anti-conversion and all of these things against Christians because of that. And when I joined this new organization, I no matter what I did, it always feel like they were trying to be okay, you know what, let me keep them at a distance because they knew I was this preacher guy, so they thought in the back of their mind that I was only going to convert them.
Mm,
So where so the real thing was being myself, like you said, being authentic, be sharing my feelings, sharing my emotions. And the best thing of one of my gifts that I have is humor. People
mm.
call them lame jokes, but I just say that jokes don't have legs, so they're lame. But
So,
people call it dad jokes and all of this stuff. But anyway, that's my gift. So, didn't you take up Malaysian Airlines? And then I said, I didn't want to go missing, you know. That was a very dark joke. I just realized if I told the same joke in Malaysia, I'd really go missing. Oh, no, that helped me break the ice with a lot of people.
yeah.
And about in my team of 23 people, at least 11 or 12 have told me on my face that we thought you are here only to convert, but I
Yeah.
realized that you are such a genuine person.
Wow, yeah.
And that helped me to I'm not saying that I preached the gospel to all of them or something like that, but that helped me to build the relationships. Like
Yeah.
coming back to what you were talking about, byproduct, I was reminded of this, how we talk about Joseph reaching the throne. I mean, not the
Mm,
throne, he reached the palace, right? Everybody
mm,
says I want to reach the palace like Joseph did. But that came as a byproduct of him investing in the cupbearer's dream,
mm,
right? He didn't come just randomly. And how did he invest in the cupbearer's dream? If he just went to the cupbearer and say, "Hey, tell me your dream," the cupbearer will give him a slap on his face. He'll be
mm.
like, "Hey, you're not even talking to me. You're not even, you're this super holy Joe. Why should I share my personal matters with you?" So the fact that the cupbearer shared the dream with Joseph shows that
So
Joseph
good.
had a good rapport with the cupbearer.
That's
Right.
so good. Yeah.
So Christians need to understand that part of, like, because I've seen the other extreme where Christians are like this hyper spiritual folks. They're like, you know what, I'm so holy, I'm so holy.
Yeah.
Like kind of like that I'm so lonely song. So they're like, I'm so holy, holy, holy. But the truth is, yeah, we are set apart, but we need to also be in the world to, help people relate and
Yeah.
understand. And that's how we are able to bring them to the table. That's how we
It's
pay
so good.
attention to what you got to say. Now they follow my content. Even 2 days ago, I did like a dance video. So people were like checking that out. And it was stupid. It was kind of like Mr. Bean dancing, though.
I love that.
But the next video was about how Jesus is the only way, truth, and life to heaven.
Yeah.
So unless they follow the dance, only then they would have seen the other one. So
Mm,
that's the way. If we are just going to be like back in the day, I was this, like the typical preacher style, wearing a coat and coming in and, with the on the pulpit. See, I still do those if I go and preach in a church
mm,
or a crusade. That's a different setting. But on media, I'm a different being.
yeah,
I use these comedy, these creativity, and that's how I'm able to break the ice, being myself.
that's so
And
good.
that is something I think is lacking among Christians. And
Mm.
that's the challenge. Like, be the light, guys. Don't be the dim light.
It's so, well, it's so true, and I think even you think about in the scripture, like the Pharisees, they knew every word of the law, but they didn't
Mm,
know God. They completely missed the Son of God when He was in
yeah.
front of them. And I think that for me, when I think about my life, there's a quote that I love, which is, you're always, or the best sermon you'll ever preach is the one that requires no words. It's just the way you live your life. And for me,
Yes.
like, so often it's like some of the best ministry I've ever done was in my corporate job, when in the lunchroom, when it's just like it was a situation where everybody was so upset and I had this piece that people couldn't explain and they didn't understand why. Or for me, like my gift, I'm not funny like you and I don't care about the jokes, but I have a gift of encouragement. Like I love
Mm,
encouraging people, and whether they knew Jesus or not, like people needed a word of encouragement. And you even think what's so cool is like in scripture, Jesus tells, I can't remember, maybe it was Judah, I can't remember where, but he basically says like a preacher greater than Jonah is here, and yet you do not hear. And I think what's so powerful about that is, wow, like Jesus knew who he was in his Father. So he did not base the ability or the amount of people's absorption of what he was saying on whether or not he was saying or doing it correctly. And I think so often we base like how great of Christians we are on how people respond to it. No, that's God's
mm,
job. Even in my family, my mom talks about this a lot. I'm one of 4 kids, and my parents grew up, we went to church. Like my parents love the Lord. 2 of my siblings don't know God. They don't want to know God. And my parents talk about all the time, as parents, we did nothing different. Like 2 of our kids love God and are so in love with him. One of them writes books about God. The other 2 don't even want to know God. And it's like, at the end of the day, you plant seeds and then you have faith that God will water it. You think about a farmer. All the farmer can do is plant the seed. He can't provide the sunshine. He can't provide the rain. Only the Lord can do that. And so, like, are you faithful to showing up wherever God has you, planting seeds, and letting God take care of the rest? Because the reality of it is, John, us wanting that conversion metric, I led this person to Christ. That's about us. That's about us saying, I was the one
mm.
that led the person to Christ. It has nothing to do with like, glory be to God. If it was really glory to be a God, it's like, hey, I planted that seed, but Lord, look at what you did. Look at what you grew. And so it's like, you have the faith to be a light in the places that God called you to be, and letting God take care of the rest, and trusting that any seeds you plant, you might not see their fruit on this side of glory, but you planted a seed and were faithful to that. And is that enough for you?
Yeah, like you said, we just plant our seeds. Like, for example, I when one of my books that I did was just a storybook, okay, which is just a fantasy story, but through that I bring in Christian principles. So even people of other faiths started checking it out, and that's how it hit number one and two categories. So here's the thing, right? Like, if I go and say this is a Christian book, guys, go and read it, they're not gonna read it. Like, so in a sense, what we need to do is we need to ask God for these unique ways of just say, God, how can I sow your word, the seed, in the unique way, in a different way? And like you said, we do our part of sowing the seed, and it's God's job to do what only God can do.